Amina stood at the window of their grand mansion, her hands gently resting over the soft swell of her belly. The early morning sun bathed the room in golden light, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Her heart fluttered with a quiet joy. She was going to be a mother. Their child was growing inside her. The thought made her eyes mist over. This child was the symbol of their love, a love that had felt like a fairy tale when she first married Assad. Assad had been the man every woman dreamed of, tall, powerful, wealthy, and effortlessly charming. But what had drawn Amina to him wasn't his status or looks, it was the way he had once made her feel seen. He would notice the tiniest change in her expression, bring her favorite coffee on stressful days, and tell her she was his peace in a world full of noise. Amina had believed those words with all her heart. He had made promises, that they would grow old together, raise children in laughter, and never let the world steal their happiness. Their home reflected that dream, each corner curated with her input, from the delicate floral curtains she adored to the cozy reading nook he built just for her. She remembered the way he'd laughed when she told him she wanted a swing chair for the nursery, promising to install it himself. Those memories were still fresh, like petals pressed between the pages of a favorite book. Now, with her birthday approaching, Amina had been glowing with quiet anticipation. She had spent the past week preparing a small dinner for just the two of them, something intimate and special. She imagined Assad surprising her with a cake, placing a hand on her belly, whispering, "This is the best birthday gift we could ask for." The image played in her mind like a scene from a movie. But lately, something felt off. Assad had begun coming home later and later. When she called, he often let it ring out. When she texted, his replies were cold and curt, a stark contrast from the man who once sent her poems at midnight. At first, Amina dismissed it as work stress. He ran a major business empire, after all. But it wasn't just the silence. It was his eyes. When he did come home, they no longer lit up when he saw her. Sometimes he barely looked at her at all. She tried brushing it off, telling herself that pregnancy hormones were making her overly sensitive. But deep down, a quiet ache had begun to grow. She'd catch him smiling at his phone, then turning it away when she entered the room. He had changed his phone's passcode. The man who used to beg for just 5 more minutes together now left the bed early without a word. Still, Amina held on to hope. Maybe he was planning something special for her birthday. Maybe all the distance was part of some elaborate surprise. She clung to that thought desperately, like a lifeline. Because letting go of that hope meant facing something far more terrifying, that the dream she had built so carefully was beginning to crack. And the person she trusted the most might no longer be the man she thought he was. Mahira lounged on a velvet chaise in her upscale apartment, her legs crossed delicately, a glass of red wine in hand. The room around her exuded luxury, crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and a faint scent of vanilla and danger. She had built this world with precision, charm, and manipulation, and at the center of it all stood Assad, the man she had slowly, methodically stolen. Their affair had started at a charity gala, a night Mahira had planned to perfection. She wasn't just beautiful, she was calculated. Her dress had been red, the color of temptation, and her eyes had locked with Assad's from across the ballroom like a silent challenge. It hadn't taken long, just a few flirty laughs, a dance too close, and a brush of her fingers across his jaw, and she knew she had him. But Mahira didn't just want Assad for a night. She wanted him entirely. The money was part of it, yes, but more than that, she craved the thrill of control, of pulling strings behind the scenes while wearing a flawless smile. And Assad, with his power and ego, had been the perfect target. Over time, she became the voice in his ear. She whispered to him how Amina didn't understand his needs, how boring his life had become, how a man like him deserved excitement. He listened. She knew how to play him, soft words when he was angry, fiery passion when he was stressed. Slowly, he began to share things with her he never shared with Amina. His frustrations, his secrets, his desires. Mahira absorbed it all, using every detail to tighten her hold. But then Amina got pregnant. The news hit Mahira like a slap across the face. She had heard it from Assad himself, during a dinner in their private suite. He had said it casually, with a hint of hesitation. She's expecting, he'd murmured. Mahira's wine glass nearly slipped from her fingers. For a moment, her carefully maintained smile faltered. Pregnant. That meant ties. That meant deeper connection. That meant Amina's position in Assad's life wasn't just emotional, it was biological. She knew if she didn't act fast, Amina would forever be the mother of Assad's child, and Mahira would be nothing but a shadow in the background. Jealousy, bitter and sharp, began to fester inside her. That night, Mahira sat beside Assad, running her fingers through his hair, planting a kiss on his neck. "You look tired," she whispered. "Is everything okay with her?" He had sighed, heavy with confusion. "She's emotional. Always wants something. I don't even feel like myself around her anymore." Mahira smiled softly, perfectly timed. "Maybe she's not who you're meant to be with anymore." She didn't push too hard, not yet. She knew how to work in layers, to plant seeds and let them grow. In the following weeks, she made Amina sound like a burden. "You deserve peace, not pressure," she'd say. "You're happiest here, with me." Assad started staying over more often. He stopped answering Amina's late-night calls. When guilt flickered in his eyes, Mahira would wrap herself around him like silk, whispering, "She'll be fine. She always bounces back. But what about you? Don't you deserve more?" Assad, weakened by temptation and Mahira's unrelenting grip, started believing the lies. In private moments, Mahira's mask would slip. She'd glare at the news of Amina's pregnancy photos online, her nails digging into her palm. She wanted Amina gone, not just out of Assad's life, but out of the picture entirely. Permanently. Because Mahira wasn't the kind of woman who shared. And if Amina wouldn't walk away quietly, Mahira was already thinking about how to make her disappear. It was past midnight when Amina awoke to the sound of muffled voices echoing through the hallway. At first, she thought it might be the security guards or the staff whispering downstairs, but something about the tone, sharp, urgent, personal, made her sit up. She rubbed her eyes and rose slowly, cradling her belly instinctively as she tiptoed out of the bedroom. The voice was Assad's. Low, agitated, full of frustration. She followed the sound to his private study. The door wasn't fully shut, and from the narrow gap, Amina could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing wildly. "You're overthinking again, Mahira. I said I'll handle it. Stop pressuring me." Amina froze. "Mahira?" The voice on the other end crackled faintly through the speaker, too low to make out, but the name was enough. Her pulse quickened, her palms cold and clammy. "No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's too caught up in her pregnancy bubble. Trust me, she's more needy than ever. I can't breathe in this house." Amina's throat tightened. She took a step back, barely able to register what she was hearing. It was like a punch to the chest, the words, the betrayal, the casual cruelty in his tone. The man she had shared her life with, the father of her unborn child, talking about her like she was an annoyance. A burden. She waited for him to hang up before pushing the door open fully. Her face was pale, but her eyes held fire. "Assad," she said softly, trembling. "Who were you talking to?" He startled but quickly masked his surprise with annoyance. "What are you doing sneaking around the house at this hour?" "I heard everything," she said, her voice cracking. "Mahira? You said I'm needy? That I'm suffocating you?" He exhaled and rubbed his face, clearly annoyed more than apologetic. "Look, don't start this emotional drama right now." "Drama?" she repeated, stunned. "I'm your wife, Assad. And I'm pregnant with your child. You're cheating on me and calling me dramatic." He stood up straight, suddenly cold. "You're always watching, always asking questions. It's exhausting. I can't breathe around you anymore." Amina stared at him, disbelief written across her face. He didn't flinch. "If you really want peace, maybe you should go stay with your brother for a while. Take some time. Think." Her voice dropped to a whisper. You're kicking me out? I'm asking for space, he said flatly, grabbing his phone. I need to clear my head. The room spun around her. She felt like the floor had given way. Amina clutched her belly as if trying to protect the baby from the blow she had just received. Everything she had believed about their love, their future, it shattered right there in that room, with one sentence, one indifferent expression. Assad didn't even look back as he walked past her and left the study. She stood alone in the doorway, a wife, a mother-to-be, abandoned, betrayed, and broken. The morning of her birthday arrived with a soft breeze and a quiet hope that Amina clung to like fragile thread. Despite everything, the coldness, the argument, the distance, she convinced herself that Assad had simply needed time. Maybe he'd felt overwhelmed, unsure. Maybe today, he would remember who they were, who she was to him. She chose her favorite deep green chiffon dress, the one he once said made her look like royalty. She pinned her hair back and added a hint of blush to her cheeks, even though she hadn't slept. She smoothed the front of her dress over her growing belly, whispering to the baby, "Maybe today will be better. Maybe he'll remember us." Downstairs, the mansion buzzed with unexpected activity. Staff ran back and forth arranging flowers, trays of food, and glimmering fairy lights. Confused but hopeful, Amina stepped down the staircase. Perhaps this was his way of surprising her. Perhaps all this effort was for her. But as she reached the living room, her heart dropped. The guests weren't friends of hers. They were socialites, investors, unfamiliar faces in designer clothing. She didn't recognize a single one of them. And standing at the center of it all, draped in a wine-colored silk gown and laughing into a champagne glass, was Mahira. Mahira looked up, spotted Amina, and smirked. For a moment, the world blurred. Amina looked around for Assad, desperate for explanation, but he was nowhere in sight. Instead, Assad's mother approached her with a thin-lipped expression, her eyes scanning Amina from head to toe as if she were dirt tracked in on a clean carpet. "What are you doing down here?" she asked sharply. "This isn't for you." Amina blinked. "It's my birthday. I thought." "Don't embarrass yourself," she cut in. "You weren't invited." "Invited?" Amina laughed nervously. "This is my house. Why wouldn't I be invited?" Just then, Assad appeared, his arm casually draped around Mahira's shoulder. His expression was unreadable, no guilt, no regret. Just cold indifference. Gasps rippled through the guests as they noticed Amina, and the tension thickened like a storm cloud. She stepped forward, eyes filled with tears. "Assad, please. What is this? You're celebrating with her on my birthday? In our home?" He didn't answer. Mahira tilted her head, her smile dripping with cruelty. "Oh, sweet Amina," she said, voice loud enough for the room to hear. "Didn't anyone tell you? You're no longer needed." A hush fell. "I'm your wife," Amina whispered. "And I'm pregnant. With your child." Assad's mother scoffed. "That's your problem, not ours." "Get her out," someone from the family muttered. "She's causing a scene." Two guards, once respectful to her, stepped forward. Amina stumbled back, shocked. "You can't be serious. I live here. This is my home, my marriage." But Assad remained silent. Mahira laughed again, cruel and victorious. "Well, not anymore." Before she could say another word, the guards escorted her to the door. Amina tried to resist, but her strength was failing. Her vision blurred from tears as she was shoved onto the front steps of the mansion she had once called home. No coat. No shoes. Only her purse. Behind her, the music resumed. Laughter filled the air. She stood there, trembling, her arms wrapped around her belly, her heart splintered in too many places to count. The wind bit at her skin as the door slammed shut behind her, sealing off the life she thought she had. On her birthday, Amina was left alone, pregnant, humiliated, and discarded like she meant nothing. Rayyan stepped off the military transport vehicle, his boots crunching against the gravel as the dust settled around him. The air was thick with the scent of engine oil and steel, But his mind wasn't on the base or the soldiers saluting him as he passed. It was on the call he had received 2 nights ago, one that had shaken him more than any mission ever had. His mother's voice had trembled with rage and disbelief. "Rayyan, it's Amina. Assad threw her out, on her birthday. She's pregnant, and homeless." He hadn't believed it at first. Not Assad. The man he once trusted with his sister's life. But as more details unfolded, how Amina had been humiliated, how Mahira had taken her place in that house, Rayyan's blood had boiled hot enough to ignite. His leave was supposed to begin the following week, but he pulled every string he could to leave early. His sister needed him. And no one, hurt Amina and walked away untouched. By the time he arrived at their family home, Amina was curled up on the old sofa in her childhood room. She looked like a ghost of herself, her skin pale, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands protectively clutching her belly like a shield against the world. "Amina," Rayyan said softly as he entered the room. She looked up, eyes filling with tears the moment she saw him. "Rayyan." He crossed the room in 2 strides and fell to his knees in front of her, gathering her carefully in his arms. "I'm here now," he whispered, holding her as she broke down. "I've got you. No one will ever hurt you again." She cried into his shoulder, unable to form words, only sobs and shallow breaths. When she finally calmed, she told him everything. The silence, the mistress, the birthday betrayal, and how Assad had stood there, cold and motionless, as she was pushed out of her own home. Rayyan's jaw clenched with each word. He'd faced enemies across borders, dealt with high-risk missions, and survived firefights, but nothing had ever made his hands tremble the way this did. Seeing his sister so broken, so discarded, felt like a deeper kind of war, and one he intended to win. "He looked at me like I was nothing," Amina whispered. Rayyan stood slowly, his expression steel-hard. "You are everything, Amina. And he's going to regret the day he made you feel otherwise." He walked to the window, staring out at the city lights as a storm built within him. "He thinks because you're pregnant, you're weak. But he forgot you have me. I don't care how rich he is, how connected he is, or how pretty that woman is. I'm not letting this go." Rayyan turned back to her, his voice calm but laced with fury. "I will protect you. I will protect this child. And I swear, by the time I'm done, the world will know exactly who Assad really is." It wasn't just a promise. It was a declaration of war. Mahira sat in front of her vanity, painting her lips blood-red as she stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was confident, composed, and terrifyingly ruthless. She had gotten everything she wanted, Assad by her side, Amina out of the house, and the city whispering her name like she was a queen. But the victory didn't taste as sweet as she imagined. Because Amina wasn't gone. Not really. The media had started sniffing around. People were asking questions. Rumors were circulating about Assad's pregnant wife being discarded without cause. And worst of all, Amina's brother, that soldier, had shown up and was already stirring trouble. Mahira had seen the posts on social media, the subtle shade thrown in interviews, the mounting sympathy building for Amina. It enraged her. Mahira knew if Amina filed for legal action, especially with the child on the way, she could make claims that would rip through Assad's assets and Mahira's lifestyle. She couldn't let that happen. She wouldn't. Not after everything she had done to climb this far. One night, as Assad sat in silence on their penthouse balcony, Mahira joined him with 2 glasses of wine. "She's not going to stay quiet," she said softly. "You think she'll just disappear?" Assad didn't respond. He stared out into the distance, a ghost of the man he used to be. The guilt had started to eat at him, but Mahira wasn't about to let him drown in it. "She's dangerous now," Mahira continued. "She has the media. Her brother. That baby. All weapons she can use against you." "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally, voice tired. Mahira smiled faintly, brushing her fingers against his. "Nothing. Let me handle it." 2 nights later, she executed her plan. Amina had been staying with her brother, but Mahira knew her routine. She knew the quiet park Amina liked to walk through in the evenings to clear her head. She waited in a black SUV down the road, wearing gloves and sunglasses, watching through tinted windows. When Amina walked near the wooded path, Mahira stepped out calmly, holding a small water bottle laced with sedatives. She approached her with a fabricated apology, fake tears, and trembling hands. "I didn't come to fight. I came to say sorry." Amina hesitated, but listened. "I brought water for the baby," Mahira added gently. "It's hot. I know I'm the last person you want to see. But please, just one sip. I can't bear this guilt." Amina, exhausted and emotionally frayed, took it. The sedatives worked quickly. Her legs buckled. Mahira caught her, smiled cruelly, and dragged her toward the nearby jeep she had hidden in the trees. Working quickly, she bound Amina's wrists and ankles with rope, chaining them to the back of the jeep. Amina, unconscious, had no idea what awaited her. Assad stood nearby, watching from a short distance with shaking hands. He had followed Mahira, partly to stop her, partly out of curiosity. But now, seeing his pregnant wife tied up like an animal, something inside him splintered. "This is insane," he said. "We can't do this. She'll destroy us," Mahira snapped. "You're either with me, or you're next." Assad opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His body was frozen, his conscience screaming, yet his weakness louder. He turned away. Mahira climbed into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirror, and started the engine. The jeep roared to life. She smiled wickedly. "I told you, sweetheart," she whispered under her breath. "There's only room for one woman in his life. And it's not you." The night air was thick with tension as Rayyan leaned over his friend's laptop, eyes locked on a blinking red dot moving through the outskirts of the city. The terrain was hilly, remote, and dangerous after dark. His friend, Adil, a fellow intelligence officer, had managed to trace Mahira's phone using a digital footprint left behind at a traffic camera hours earlier. At first, it seemed harmless, but when the jeep's route diverted suddenly toward an abandoned forest trail, alarm bells rang in Rayyan's gut. "Why would she go there this late?" Rayyan muttered, pacing. His instincts, sharpened by years in combat, screamed something wasn't right. Adil shook his head, frowning. "She's not following any main road now. Look at this, there are no homes or businesses out there. Just dirt, cliffs, and trees." Rayyan clenched his jaw. "And Amina hasn't answered her phone in over an hour." Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. He bolted for the door, grabbing his helmet as he sprinted toward his motorbike parked outside. Within seconds, the engine roared to life, and he was speeding through the city, weaving between cars like a man possessed. His heart pounded as the GPS directions barked in his earpiece, guiding him toward the blinking that represented Mahira, and possibly Amina. Meanwhile, Amina stirred. Her head throbbed as consciousness crept back in waves. Her vision was blurry, the world around her spinning. At first, she didn't understand what was happening. Her limbs felt heavy, and her skin was scraped from rough dragging. Then she felt it, the coarse rope cutting into her wrists and the bitter cold of metal against her ankle. And the sound. The low, growling engine of a jeep. She was tied to it. Panic surged through her veins like fire. She screamed, her voice cracking, but the sound was swallowed by the wilderness around her. Her mind raced as she struggled against the restraints, but they were tight. Too tight. "Help! Someone! Please!" she cried out, voice hoarse and wild. Inside the jeep, Mahira glanced in the rearview mirror, a sick smile tugging at her lips. The headlights lit the dirt road ahead, and behind her, she could see the faint, thrashing silhouette of Amina. Finally, Mahira muttered to herself. No more sympathy. No more headlines. No more baby. She pressed harder on the gas. The vehicle lurched forward, pulling Amina slowly at first, just a few inches. Dirt and leaves scratched against her skin. She screamed again, louder this time, the pain and terror raw in her voice. And far off in the night, Rayyan heard it. He was almost there. The sound of the jeep's engine and the faint echoes of a woman's scream pierced through the trees. He swerved off-road, accelerating through the narrow trail, headlights bouncing against the forest. "Hold on, Amina," he growled under his breath. "I'm coming." As Mahira sped up, the jeep bumped over rough terrain. Amina's dress tore against sharp rocks, her legs scraped and bleeding. She sobbed through the pain, begging the universe for mercy, for her child, for a miracle. That miracle came in the form of blinding headlights slicing through the trees and a sudden, thunderous engine roaring toward the jeep. "Rayyan!" He shot out of the darkness, cutting in front of Mahira's path with barely seconds to spare. The jeep screeched as Mahira yanked the wheel, trying to avoid collision. Rayyan leaped from the bike mid-motion, drawing his service pistol in a fluid move honed by training and fury. "Stop the car!" he shouted, his voice shaking the woods. Mahira, panicked, tried to reverse, but the front tire skidded in a ditch. The vehicle slammed against a tree trunk, jerking to a halt. Rayyan sprinted toward the back, his heart nearly stopping at the sight of his sister, bloodied, tied, sobbing, but alive. He dropped to his knees, hands shaking as he untied the chains. "Amina! Amina, look at me. You're safe now. I've got you." She looked up at him with tear-filled eyes, lips trembling. "Rayyan, I thought I was going to die." "You won't," he whispered, lifting her into his arms. "Not today. Not while I'm breathing." Mahira, still in the driver's seat, looked dazed and furious, her plan obliterated in an instant. Rayyan's gaze met hers, a promise, cold and dangerous. "This isn't over," he growled. "You'll answer for all of it." And with that, he carried Amina away from the wreckage, away from death, and into the light of survival. The headlights of Mahira's jeep pierced through the darkness, the vehicle hurtling forward like a beast with no conscience. Her knuckles gripped the steering wheel tightly, her foot pressed harder against the gas pedal. Behind her, Amina's body bounced violently along the dirt road, every bump scraping her skin, every second closer to death. Then, out of nowhere, a motorbike skidded into view, its rider cutting across the path and halting directly in front of the speeding jeep. The wheels screeched. Dust and gravel exploded into the air. Mahira's eyes widened. "What the?" Rayyan stood there like a wall of vengeance, one hand steadying the motorbike and the other pointing a loaded pistol straight at the windshield. His face was a mask of rage and precision, his eyes locked on hers without a single blink. "Turn it off," he bellowed over the roar of the engine. Mahira's lips curled in disbelief. "Move," she spat through the window. "Or I'll run you down too." "I said turn it off." Rayyan roared, stepping closer, the barrel of the gun unwavering. Mahira slammed her palm on the steering wheel, furious, and floored the accelerator again. Without hesitation, Rayyan fired. A deafening crack shattered the night as his bullet ripped through the front tire. The jeep jolted violently to one side, the rubber tearing, and the vehicle swerved out of control, crashing into a muddy ditch before coming to a lurching stop. Smoke hissed from the hood. The engine coughed and died. Rayyan didn't wait. He dashed to the back of the jeep, where Amina lay motionless, her wrists bruised and her face scraped. For a split second, fear gripped him that he was too late, but then she stirred, a faint whimper escaping her lips. He dropped to his knees beside her, heart pounding. "Amina, I'm here," he whispered, choking back emotion. "You're safe. I've got you." Her eyes fluttered open, swollen and teary, and she reached weakly for him. "Rayyan." He gently unchained her, lifting her into his arms as if she were made of glass. Behind them, the jeep door slammed. Mahira stormed out, her heels sinking into the mud. Her silk dress was torn, her hair wild with fury. "You ruined everything," she screamed. "You think you're the hero here? She deserved it, lying, pathetic little leech. She ruined him." Rayyan turned slowly to face her, his sister trembling in his arms. "I don't need to ruin Assad," Rayyan said coldly. "He did that to himself the moment he chose you over his own child." "You don't scare me," she hissed. "You should," he replied, stepping forward. Because tonight, the only reason you're still breathing is because my sister is still alive." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Police were coming. Mahira's time was up. As Rayyan carried Amina toward safety, he didn't look back. Not once. He knew Mahira's screams would soon be drowned by cuffs, flashing lights, and the justice she never saw coming. Rayyan stood outside the hospital room, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, jaw clenched as he watched Amina sleep through the glass. Her face was bruised, her lips split, and her arms bandaged, but she was alive. Her heartbeat steady. The baby, thank God, was safe. That was all that mattered now. But justice wasn't complete. Not yet. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Adil," he said firmly, "get every clip from the helmet cam. Every second. I want it uploaded and sent to every news outlet in the city. No edits. No filters. The world needs to see what was done to my sister." Within hours, social media exploded. Hashtags flooded timelines. Hashtag justice for Amina. Hashtag pregnant not powerless. Hashtag Mahira exposed. The video showed everything. Mahira's jeep dragging Amina, Rayyan's daring standoff, the final confrontation. It was brutal, undeniable, and horrifying. Outrage spread like wildfire. News anchors played the footage on repeat, shocked and emotional. Women's rights groups called for immediate action. Influencers, celebrities, and politicians began speaking up, demanding the arrests of both Mahira and Assad. Rayyan didn't stop there. He handed over his full report to the police, every recorded conversation, every threatening message Mahira had sent to Amina. The drugged water bottle was found in the jeep. Witnesses came forward. And when Mahira was brought in, snarling and screaming in cuffs, she sealed her own fate by attempting to assault an officer on the spot. Assad, meanwhile, had gone silent. He refused interviews, cut off his phone, and tried to book a private flight out of the country. But Rayyan was already ahead of him. He alerted airport security. Assad was arrested at the terminal, surrounded by reporters shouting questions and flashing cameras. His face, once associated with success and power, now bore the shame of betrayal and cowardice. He didn't resist. He couldn't. The weight of public disgust had already crushed his image. The trial began within days due to the national pressure. In the courtroom, Amina appeared wearing a soft blue hijab and holding Rayyan's hand. Though visibly shaken, she stood tall, dignified, calm, and powerful. Every woman in that courtroom saw her as a symbol. Mahira, dressed in a plain prison jumpsuit, showed no remorse. She sneered at the cameras, refusing to answer questions, and sat back with folded arms as the evidence was played again. Assad looked smaller than ever. When the judge delivered his verdict, the courtroom was silent. "Mahira Qureshi," the judge began sternly, "you are found guilty of attempted murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. You showed no remorse and acted with cruelty beyond comprehension. You will serve 25 years in prison." Gasps echoed. "Assad Qureshi," the judge continued, "you may not have driven that car, but you enabled the woman who did. You are found guilty of aiding and abetting attempted murder and are sentenced to 10 years with no parole." Then, turning to Rayyan, "Let the record show the extraordinary courage of Lieutenant Rayyan Malik, whose swift action saved 2 lives and exposed a crime that might have otherwise gone unnoticed." Amina was granted full legal protection, sole custody of her unborn child, and full ownership of the property that had once been hers and Assad's. Mahira's assets were seized and redirected toward compensation for Amina's physical and emotional trauma. Outside the court, reporters crowded around. "Rayyan, how does it feel to bring them to justice?" one asked. He looked at Amina, standing beside him with quiet strength, and said, "They thought she was alone. They forgot she had me. Justice had been served. And Amina had finally been heard." Sunlight filtered gently through the curtains of Amina's new apartment, casting a golden glow on the soft pink walls and baby clothes neatly folded on the dresser. The room smelled of fresh lilies and warm milk, and in the center of it all lay a tiny bundle wrapped in white. Amina gazed at her newborn daughter, tears silently slipping down her cheeks, not of pain, but of awe. Her heart overflowed with emotions she couldn't name. The past few months had been grueling, marked by healing, legal battles, therapy, and moments of quiet grief. But they had also been filled with strength, resilience, and rebirth. Rayan stood beside her, cradling the baby girl in his arms, his uniform jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbows. His eyes, usually sharp and observant, were now soft with wonder. He gently rocked her, brushing a kiss on her tiny forehead. "She's so strong," he murmured. "Just like her mother." Amina smiled, exhausted but radiant. "Her name is Noor. Because she brought light into my life again." The journey had been long, but she had found her peace. After the trial, Amina had chosen not to return to the mansion she once called home. Instead, she used part of her settlement to build something new, something entirely hers. A safe place. A sanctuary. But she knew she couldn't stop there. With Rayan's support, Amina had poured her energy into building Noor Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping women who had survived abuse, manipulation, or abandonment. Women who, like her, had been silenced, cast out, or made to feel invisible. The launch day arrived on a crisp spring morning. The hall was filled with reporters, supporters, survivors, and volunteers. At the center stood Amina, dressed in a modest yet elegant suit, Noor cradled close to her chest. A large screen behind her displayed images of her journey, from smiling with Assad during happier times, to standing bruised and betrayed, to holding her newborn in triumph. Cameras flashed as Amina stepped up to the podium. Her voice trembled at first, but then steadied, empowered by every eye watching her. Not with pity, but with admiration. "There was a time I believed love would protect me," she began. "I thought loyalty meant safety. I thought silence was strength. But when I was betrayed, humiliated, and nearly killed, I learned the harshest truth. Silence only protects the abuser." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. "They tried to silence me. But my brother gave me back my voice." She looked at Rayan, who stood near the front, eyes shining with pride. "And my life." The room erupted into applause. Some wept openly. Others stood, hands clapping fiercely, as if every clap struck down another layer of shame they themselves had carried. Noor stirred in her arms, letting out a small cry. Amina laughed softly. "And this little light reminds me that even in the darkest times, something beautiful can be born." That day marked more than a launch. It was a declaration that Amina had not only survived, but risen. That her story would now become the reason another woman didn't give up.